And I'd like you to welcome Fiona Patton, please.
Thank you, David, and thank you to the Fellowship of the Round Table for this opportunity. I must say, I don't really know what the word cyber hate means either, so I kind of took the second part of the topic, which was censorship of the internet, as the basis for my brief talk. I'm assuming that most people in the room have a fairly good understanding of the current system and the proposed policy by Senator Conroy for ISP filtering, but I'll just quickly recap. Currently, we have a regime under the Broadcasting Services Act, which was introduced by Senator Alston, who was the then Communications Minister. He did it, and with the cry that we will have no pornography on the internet in Australia. I believe he was classed as the global village idiot at the time by the American Civil Liberties Union. But what he introduced was a blacklist. He said that there would no Australian internet service providers or ISPs could host adult content, so anything that would be considered rated R using film classifications, or X. And X-rated material is sexually explicit material. It cannot show violence, it cannot show degrading or assaultative language, it can just show adults doing what comes naturally to them. So anyway, that was banned, as was any site with R-rated computer games and any R-rated sites without age verification. Now, so no Australian ISPs could host that material, and if a member of the public found such a site that was an adult site that featured adults doing what comes naturally, they could report that to the ACMA, which is the Australian Communications and Media Authority. And the ACMA would have a look at that site, and then they'd say, yes, indeed, that does have some rather naughty things. So they would put it on a blacklist. And then that blacklist was then referred to all of the filtering companies so they could filter those sites. And I'm sure a lot of you heard in the media that the blacklist was leaked some months ago. So that's currently what we have now. We have a blacklist that's kept by the ACMA. It's secret. People can report sites. And if it's sites like child pornography or something, a crime site, then of course the ACMA reports that to the police or the authorities. Now, the proposed policy by Senator Conroy is to have a mandatory filter. So not a filter that we as Australians can opt out of. Now, the filter will come in two parts. The first part you can opt out of, and we're not sure how that will be and what will happen, and we're not even sure what will be filtered in that first one, but it's been loosely called material that would be inappropriate for children. So that will be level 1 filter. Then level 2 filter, that is the mandatory filter, and you cannot opt out of that. All ISPs in Australia will have to block Australians from accessing websites that are on they're on the blacklist. So every ISP will be sent information about sites that are to go on the blacklist. These sites, initially this was to include what is currently on the blacklist. That was refused classification material that would be X-rated, so it was sex sites, and of course any sites that had R-rated computer games or R-rated sites without age verification. Now that seems to have changed, and it seems we're getting a bit of policy on the run. Well, we haven't actually seen the Minister speak about this for some time. We're sure he's still there. But the last time I certainly had a chance to speak with him was on SBS Insight program, when all of a sudden X was no longer banned. And I think, a number of us on the panel were quite surprised that all of a sudden X was going to be okay on the internet, but not, of course, not R-rated computer games or material that would be considered refused classification. Now, when we talk refused classification, that's refused in the film guidelines. So I just, for a little bit of show and tell, here are two Here's a magazine, and this is a Category 2 magazine. It features people having sex. Here is an X-rated film. It features people having sex. This is a magazine photos taken from the film. Now, the magazine is Category 2, and it's allowed to show some material that is not allowed in films. So things like, handcuffs or light bondage or spanking or that sort of thing. That's all prohibited in film, but allowed in magazines. So under the current proposal, that material would be prohibited online, and it would be mandatory to filter that material or to block sites that showed that material. And this is, of course, supported by Mr Wallace, the Australian Christian Lobby, and certainly Angela Conway, Pro-Family Perspectives. And I personally think that if they weren't supporting it, I'm not sure the government would. I think the government's realising that this is actually not taking them anywhere good, but they are keeping up with this crazy policy. And it was interesting, Jim's recent press release last week, which was calling on the ban of X-rated material throughout Australia, except on the internet, which I thought was fantastic. So he was calling for a ban on all X-rated DVDs, except on the internet, where he supports the proposal that X not be banned on the internet and people be allowed to see X online. It was quite interesting. The ACL has long advocated for a filtering system that requires people who want to access pornography to have to opt in through a filter system to receive it. But yet you're calling for a ban on the product offline. I just thought it was an interesting contrast. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I'm sure you don't need to be quoting. Yeah, you're here.